You know that feeling, right? You say one thing, the person you're talking to hears something totally different, and suddenly, a simple chat just completely derails. You meant well, your intentions were good, but it didn't seem to matter. So why does this keep happening? Well, in this explainer, we're going to get to the bottom of it. So check this out. This quote is from a real story about a guy we'll just call Mr. S. He's out shopping, sees a 25% discount on some sweaters, and does the math in his head. Simple enough. But when he gets to the cash register, the price is almost 500 rupees more than he expected. He's just left standing there, confused, frustrated. It's a textbook communication breakdown. And Mr. S's story really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? Even when we're trying our best, why does communication just fall apart so often? As we're about to see, the whole process is way more complicated than we think. It's full of these hidden bugs and glitches that we really need to debug.
So, before we can squash the bugs, we have to understand the system itself. In a perfect world, communication would be this beautifully oiled machine, you know? It moves a message from point A to point B without a single scratch. And it follows this clean 5-step blueprint.
Here's how it's supposed to flow. It all starts with the source, that's you, with an idea. Then you have to encode it, wrap that idea up in words or symbols. You send it through a channel, like talking or sending a text. The other person then has to decode it or interpret it. And finally, they act on it. When every single one of those steps works perfectly, the message lands exactly as you intended.
Our whole understanding of this has really changed over time. We used to think of communication as just a one-way street, kind of like a megaphone, where one person just blasts a message at a totally passive receiver. But the modern way to see it, it's a conversation, a two-way street. The receiver is an active participant who's giving feedback, constantly shaping the meaning of the conversation. That back and forth, that feedback loop, it is everything.
But of course, even in a perfect model, things get in the way. The first bug we'll talk about is noise. And I mean this literally. Think of it as actual physical static. A bad cell connection, a super loud cafe, terrible handwriting on a note. It's something external that physically gets in the way of the message.
Now, the second bug is way more subtle, and honestly, a lot more powerful. These are filters. This isn't external static. This is the static inside our own minds. Our attitudes, our beliefs, our past experiences, they all act like a filter that can twist and change a message after we receive it, and we might not even notice it's happening. These filters create the first big set of barriers, the ones inside your head.
All right, first up, let's talk about intrapersonal barriers. These are the ones that exist completely within one person. Think of them like bugs running in your own personal operating system.
A perfect way to understand this is the old story of the blind men and the elephant, right? One guy feels the trunk and says, it's a snake. Another feels the leg and says, nope, it's a tree. Technically, none of them are wrong based on what they're experiencing, but none of them are seeing the whole picture. That's varied perceptions in a nutshell. We all see the same reality, but through our own, very limited personal lens.
Here's another bug for you. Wrong assumptions. Picture this. A doctor tells a patient to take a certain medicine, SOS. Now, the doctor assumes the patient knows that's medical shorthand for take only if you really need it in an emergency. But what if they don't? That instruction is now useless or even worse, potentially dangerous. The communication just failed because of one tiny, unchecked assumption.
And this is such a key takeaway. Before you start talking, you have to ask yourself, am I assuming something my audience doesn't know? You've got to put yourself in their shoes. It's really the only way to catch this kind of error before it happens.
And one last internal bug, categorical thinking. This is that I already know everything about this attitude. The trigger words are these absolutes you see here. When you hear someone say, everybody knows that, or this will never work, that's a huge red flag. They're signaling that their mind is made up, and they're basically shutting the conversation down. Now let's see how these bugs create barriers between people.
So we've looked at the bugs inside our own heads. Now, let's talk about the glitches that pop up in the space between two people. These are the interpersonal barriers.
Okay, a huge interpersonal barrier is just poor listening. And let's be clear, there is a massive difference here. Hearing is passive. It's just the physical act of sound waves hitting your eardrums. But listening?
Listening is an active, deliberate choice. It takes focus, it takes energy to really try to understand what's being said. So many conversations fail simply because one person is just hearing, not truly listening.
Now, we all know that anger can be a communication barrier. That's obvious. But what's really fascinating is that even really positive emotions can cause problems. If you're overexcited or just incredibly happy, you're just as likely to miss important details or subtleties. The lesson here is that any strong emotion, good or bad, can basically hijack our ability to communicate clearly.
And this one is huge. If you say, I'm totally open to your feedback, but you're crossing your arms, you're tapping your foot, you're avoiding eye contact, which message do you think the other person is going to believe? Your body language, of course. When your words and your actions don't match up, you create a massive communication gap.
All right, we've looked at bugs inside of us and the glitches between us. This final category is about the flaws baked into the system itself, the organizational barriers you find in companies, groups, and, well, anywhere, really.
One of the biggest organizational flaws is just having too many links in the communication chain. To show you just how bad this can get, let's play a little game of telephone. Here is the original message from a professor. It says, "Meet me on Friday as I am going out of station tomorrow." Seems pretty clear, right?
Okay, now, that message gets passed along just one time. And look what happened. Friday somehow became tomorrow, and tomorrow became today. Just like that, the core details are already scrambled.
By the time the message finally reaches the student it was intended for, it is completely backwards. Student X is now being told to meet the professor today because he won't be available tomorrow. In just 2 steps, the message is the literal opposite of what was intended. That's the danger of having too many transfer stations.
And here's another system flaw: information overload. I mean, we are all drowning in data, right? Emails, notifications, messages. And when a really critical update is buried under an avalanche of other stuff, it's pretty much guaranteed to get lost. It just goes to show you, good communication isn't about sending more information. It's about sending the right information. Quality always beats quantity.
I just love this quote from our source material because it sums it all up perfectly. All of these barriers, the ones in our heads, between people, and in the system, they all act like a sieve. They don't always block the entire message, but they let only bits and pieces get through. And what comes out the other side is distorted, it's incomplete, and it is rarely what the sender actually meant.
So, there you have it. We've looked at how communication is supposed to work, and we've diagnosed all the common bugs that can crash the system. The noise, the filters, the bad assumptions, the overload. So I'll leave you with this question. The next time a conversation of yours goes sideways, which one of these bugs do you think is the real culprit? Thanks for digging into this with me.